Mein Sohn, jetzt hast in Bergen durchflüchten, auf morgen die freudige Krieg. Auf den Wollen flüchten, wir wollen morgen flüchten. Ist unser Sieg, unser Sieg, unser Sieg.
Hey everyone, hope you're all doing well and welcome back to the channel. And welcome indeed to the BF-109 F4. The other day I put up a poll on YouTube asking where out of the more powerful 109s, the F4, the G6 and the K4, which one of those people considered to be the most formidable for its rank and tier. And it was overwhelmingly in the F4's favour, and to be honest I actually agree. For a 4.0 aircraft, it's a real solid machine, and it definitely sits in the tier 3 bracket very, very comfortably. It isn't the most overpowered thing at its tier, however it is an incredibly good all-round aircraft, which is why I think so many people love to use it and why it's got such amazingly good statistics when you look at it on Thunderskill and things like that. It's a very well handled aircraft in sim, and some people have literally got thousands upon thousands of confirmed kills in the game with this thing. It is very, very good in the right hands. Before we hop into the actual gameplay stuff, I just want to quickly run through what you get with the F4. So the F4 in general was an overall upgrade from the ML series, improved aerodynamics and improved power plant and improved weapons. So the big improvement in terms of firepower was the addition of the new MG151 cannons. So this, as standard, gets one, which is centrally mounted. In fact, it's actually set up behind the engine, and the barrel runs between the cylinder banks and comes straight out through the nose of the aircraft. And then you've got two fuselage-mounted MG17s as well. Now, the really good thing about these cannons is if you take universal, air targets, or stealth, you get the Minengeschoss rounds, which are brilliant for taking out enemy aircraft, be that fighters or medium or heavy bombers. They are very good ammunition all around and very much feared by allied pilots. Now, in terms of general performance, it has excellent rate of climb, 20 meters a second. It's got reasonably good turn time. It won't outturn a Spitfire, however, it will outturn other more sluggish opponents. And it has a reasonably good top speed, even in a dive. However, you got to be careful. If you're used to flying Focke-Wulf 190s, you need to remember with the 109, you cannot do a sustained dive like you can do in a 190. You can do short dives, which is great for quick short boom and zoom attacks, but a prolonged dive will result in fatal compression of your control surfaces, or it could in fact result in structural collapse of the aircraft basically, and you'll just fall into the ground in a fireball of pain and despair. So 4.0 rank 3, I have a talisman on it, which the game actually gave to me. I was very thankful of that day. Obviously, I've been flying it a lot, and the game was like, here, have a talisman. So, you know, it was my research vehicle for a very long time when I was first grinding through the Gem tree. It is the first of two. You also get the 109 F4 Trop, which was the one designed for more, obviously, you know, hotter and tropical climates. However, this does work well on all maps. Now, speaking of maps, the initial gameplay I had intended on showing you guys today was actually from a game on Rua. Unfortunately, all of the footage that I recorded over the weekend turned out to be useless because I'd been doing some tweaking with my recording settings and forgot to set them back to the original settings after my experimentation, and therefore all footage that I recorded over the weekend couldn't be used for editing purposes. It just wasn't of the quality that I deem acceptable. However, I persevered and went out and found games, and I eventually got a really good game with this on Tunisia, and that is what I'm going to show you guys now and give you guys a good demonstration of how good the F4 can be. Now, the F-4 is of course a battle rating 4.0 aircraft, which means you cannot take it out straight away. You need to go and do things in the game and earn spawn points before you can take it out. So I thought, you know what, we'll start off in the captured P-47 Thunderbolt, also known as the Hitler Bolt, and have a bit of fun, as the game we jumped into was busy essentially from the get-go. And we found a couple of victims pretty quickly. We were able to slap a F-6 out of the sky nice and quickly, and we also found a fellow Thunderbolt to chase down that was busy harassing one of our allies. Now, there had been just previously a capture point here, which is why I think so much of the aircraft was still concentrated in this area, and we just quite comfortably cut the wing off that P-47. Those 50 cals still hit like a ton of bricks. I don't know why some people say they have been nerfed. They don't feel like they've been nerfed to me. Now, thankfully, that was enough to get enough spawn points and just get straight into the F-4. I didn't really want to spend too long in the Thunderbolt if I could help it, as this video is of course meant to be focusing on the 109. Now, with all 109s, there is a bit of torque steer when you take off, so always have a bit of opposite rudder, and be careful of the roll as well as you take off. Sometimes it'll make the left wing want to tip over, and that can trip up some new pilots and cause them to damage their aircraft on takeoff, which is of course something you don't want to do. Now, after climbing for a bit, we went back to the area where we had seen some combat before, and we found a friendly being engaged by a A-26, one mounting gun pods, which is a particularly spicy opponent to tackle if you're not careful with it. So we pull up to get a wee bit more altitude and have a quick roll over and survey the scene to see what direction they're turning in, because of course we want to make sure we're getting a good deflection on this. Unfortunately, we do miss with the opening rounds. This was the first couple of days that I had flown a 109 in a very long time, and I'd essentially forgotten how to lead with the guns on this particular aircraft. I've been flying a lot of jet games recently, and the only real propeller aircraft that I've been using for the past few weeks has either been American aircraft, mostly with 50 caliber ammunition, or Spitfires, as I've been working on the Spitfire tutorial. So learning to lead all over again with the German guns was a little bit frustrating, but we were able to get a critical hit on that A-26. Looks like we took out something to do with his oil system, and he's now leaking his vital fluids everywhere. He decides to make a run for his airfield, and we are in the pursuit and are intending to chase him down. Now, the enemy's damaged, and we're going to catch it absolutely no problem, but the question is, are we going to catch it before we get in the dangerous range of the airfield to AAA? Now, propeller planes are incredibly susceptible to the airfield defenses at this tier, because we're not as fast as jets. If you're going below 400 knots, you're usually going to be copping a lot of hits from the enemy airfield. Thankfully, we chop off his wing and send the A-26 into the ground just before we get to the effective range of the AAA defenses, which was very lucky for us. We were able to avoid any real worry with that. Now, after climbing for a little bit, we came across a enemy fighter that was absolutely beelining for a 109 that was about 1,000 meters above us, completely not paying attention to us creeping up on the right, and we get a really easy deflection on this, and it was actually a Cannon Mustang, I believe. Now, that 109 the Mustang was chasing after was actually circling because there were two other enemy aircraft nearby, one of which being an American fighter and the other one being a French fighter, and seeing as the 109's going after the American, I thought we'd go after the Frenchman. Now, it was one of those incredibly powerful in the right hands VB-105s. However, this guy wasn't particularly sprightly. He did try to get away with us in a dive here, but honestly, it was a relatively straightforward gunfight with this one. I was expecting a little bit more of a challenge with this, but as you can see here, we're just laying into him, and he is now on fire. And that's the end of that particular engagement as well. So the start of the game wasn't exactly the most exciting thing. The engagements were a mix between players getting warmed up, and there were a couple of bots thrown in. Bots can be a challenge if you don't know how to deal with them, because they seem to get magical anti-gravity powers. However, once you've figured out how to trick them and how to get them out of their cycle of endless turning, you can of course blast them out of the sky as well. Now what we're chasing here is an A-26, however I very quickly realised that he's actually baiting us in to get pounced on by a Thunderbolt, so we very quickly change targets here and engage that Thunderbolt straight away because he's definitely the bigger threat. I always deem them to be the much higher threat just because, I mean, nobody really wants to face 850 caliber machine guns. They can do a lot of work to you if they get guns on you, so we took care of them very quickly. Now that A-26, I actually don't know where it went. I think it ended up running back to the airfield. I think the other 109 got some glancing hits on it and damaged it enough to force them to RTB. And then somebody decided to take out a P-61, and these things can be especially dangerous to face because of that quad 50 cal top mounted defense turret. Most people obviously use the mouse, external mouse aim view with that, much like with bomber pilots, so it can be a very effective weapon of defense if you're good with it, and it's definitely something not to be taken lightly. If you're not careful with how you fight this particular aircraft, it can knock you out of the sky incredibly quickly, or at least cripple you to the point where you're forced to disengage from it and return back to base. Now we break off the engagement here with the P-61 as another Thunderbolt has come into the fray. Once again, Thunderbolt is the higher threat, so we need to take that out first. Now in a straight up maneuver fight, if we go into general turns, we are of course the more maneuverable of the two. And the P-61 gets blasted out the sky there by our ally, which leaves us just with the Thunderbolt to deal with, and we duck under his spray of fire. And I realise at this point there is another enemy aircraft coming in as well, and I decide, right, they both have far too much altitude and energy compared to me. It's going to be safer for me to just absolutely hammer the throttle and try and get away from this situation before it gets out of hand, and I run out of energy to even effectively perform basic defensive maneuvers, yet alone try and get on the offense again. Now I thought I got away, however I counted my eggs before they hatched, and without properly checking my 6, a third fighter had actually managed to sneak up on me as I was climbing around the center of the map, and I got sent into the desert with quite accurate gunfire, to be honest. It was a very quick volley, but it took out my engine. I dropped the landing gear and ditched it in the desert. And with our next respawn, after waiting 5 minutes, we decided to take out the 109, but with the extra 20mm gun pods, which basically is now an option for most 109s moving forward. You have the option of adding 2 gun pods onto it. Dramatically improves your firepower, however it does come at the cost of reduced maneuverability, so it's something to be considerate of. Now not long after takeoff, we find a friendly being chased down by a P-47 Thunderbolt, and a Thunderbolt is a large aircraft, and now we have lots of large cannons, and he is chasing our friendly right as they're on final, so we are coming in here to try and save them, if at all possible, from the raining death of 850 cal machine guns being unloaded at point blank range. We don't quite manage to save them, and we suffer for some really weird frame drops here for a split second, but we do knock out the Thunderbolt and avenge our fallen comrade. I'm not too sure what went on with those frames, but it was the only performance issue I had during the entire match, which was quite nice. And then the guy in the P-61 decided he wanted to come back for round 2 with me and the other guys on the German team, and they engaged in a maneuver fight, which is a bit curious. Now we had to be very careful to obviously stay out of the field of view of its nose, because it has nose mounted 50 cals as well, and they can be very nasty if applied by a good hand. Now we sail up and over this because the other F-4 is happily engaged, and we actually spot another aircraft coming in, looks like a Thunderbolt, and we don't really want to get caught focusing too heavily on the P-61 as there's already a friendly engaging that. We want to go in and take out the Thunderbolt before it engages our friendly, who is trying to take out the P-61. Now the Thunderbolt fires a volley, our friend is now aware of his presence, and we go in and do a shallow dive, get some hits on the Thunderbolt. However, there's nothing but sparks. This time we were able to knock out something on his cooling or engine system, starts trailing some really dark black smoke, and he makes a run for the river and the bridge to try and do the old sneaky hiding under the bridge and trying to get me to break myself chasing after it. I'm not going to fall for this trick because that's my trick. I hop over the bridge, follow him into the canyon, very careful of the rock faces, squeeze off a volley, get another critical hit, and basically the Thunderbolt at this point is now uncontrollable. I peel off to a slightly higher altitude and watch as it crashes into the village in the tank part of the map. Now the other good thing about running the 20mm gun pods is they do extend the amount of time we're able to stay in the air. Now I'm not talking about fuel loads, I'm talking about ammunition count. Now adding these two guns does add more ammunition, however you can still waste it. That being said, somebody with good trigger discipline can make this extra ammunition go a very long way, and the longer you are in the sky with ammunition, the more useful you will be. You'll be able to complete objectives, you'll be able to intercept enemy aircraft, enemy bombers, and you can be a general nuisance, and of course earn your team more points, which will of course get you closer and closer to your victory. Now after that run-in with the Thunderbolt, we came across a couple of bots and took them out, but I didn't include that in the video because it was pretty boring footage. After that we landed rearmed, got back into the sky, and were very quickly intercepted by another P-47 Thunderbolt. In fact, I'm pretty certain it was the same person that I shot down before, coming back for a spot of revenge. Now they caught me at a very bad time because I was at relatively low altitude with relatively little energy, and he came in at a right old pace and carried a lot of energy with him. Unfortunately, he is now wasting said energy by trying to maneuver fight me at the deck. He should have just gone straight back up to altitude and tried diving on me again. Instead, he's trying to turn with me. We just had a very dicey head-on. He could have won that, but we got very lucky and none of his rounds did any critical damage. Now at this point we're able to take the advantage onto our side as we have drained him of a lot of his speed and we are more maneuverable. Now there is another factor coming into play now, which is that of a second Thunderbolt, so we need to be very careful of that. Our friendly that flew over in the other F-4 was dragging a Thunderbolt with them, so now we know that there are two fighters in play. I need to try and take out this one as quickly as I can, which I do because I know I'm about to get engaged by aircraft number 2. And fighter number 2 is coming in hard and fast, and he's trailing a couple of contacts with him. I can't tell if they're enemy or friendly yet, so what I do is I dip my nose down to avoid the worst of his fire, see that there is indeed a friendly there, a 190 being pursued very heavily by a Thunderbolt. So we've got a Mustang being pursued by a 190, being pursued by a Thunderbolt, and said Thunderbolt has just set our friendly 190 on fire, which leaves us to deal with a Mustang and a Thunderbolt on our lonesome. So we peel up into the vertical and get some critical hits on what I believe is the Thunderbolt, and we almost stall out here, which could have ended very badly for us as the other aircraft was diving back down on us. We're able to pull up just enough speed to avoid a fatal blow here, although we do take some very, very heavy damage, particularly to the wing roots. One more hit like that and our wing is going to come clean off. Now one of the enemies is smoking, the other one is not. At this point I decide, right, I won't be able to win this fight, I need to cut and run if I can. So I wait until the enemy is on the outward turn and I just start beelining it back to our airfields. Unfortunately, the Mustang had zoom climbed and was at a really good energy advantage here, and he dives down and finishes the job and sends us into the sand. I have to give credit to the people on the other team. There was a lot of good communication and teamwork done with the enemy team in this game, and often people were flying out in tandems or in sets of 3, and it made for some very interesting action. Unfortunately, the match started to die off in terms of pace after that last dogfight. However, there was one more bit of excitement to be had before we got into the closing stages of this game. Now, I just saw that an enemy Corsair had taken out our surveillance aircraft, and the Corsair is the one aircraft at this tier that I truly fear. It is my Achilles heel. I'm not good at flying them, and I'm not good at fighting them. I've always just struggled to get the correct technique with it. So I thought, you know what? I'll give it a bash. No one else seems to be aware of where the Corsair is. Everyone else is stuck in a furball in the middle of the game. I know exactly where the Corsair was because I knew where the surveillance aircraft is, and so I head in that general direction at a gentle climb. Meanwhile, below my wings, there's barely contained chaos over the center of the map, as once again the pilot in the P-61 goes in guns blazing and starts gunshipping 110s and 109s at point-blank range. To some effect, though, credit where it's due. They do get some kills, and we finally spot the Corsair coming into render view here. They do have a bit of an altitude advantage still, so we need to carry on this climb. The plan was, with this fight, to at least engage it at the same altitude, co-altitude, if not with an energy advantage. However, it's at this stage I realize that I myself have been detected by the person flying the Corsair, and they have changed course and are essentially getting ready to go straight at me. And it's at this point I make a conscious decision that when I get engaged in this fight, I'm going to try and draw the Corsair down to a lower altitude. Now, the Corsair will outturn me, especially in horizontal turns. However, the 109 can still do very well in vertical and out of plane maneuvers. So I start to try and bait this Corsair into a turn fight with a downward trend. If I can, I'd like to try and get into some rolling scissors, because the 109 is very good at those compared to a Corsair. Corsair's not having any of it though. He's sticking with his wide sweeping turns, and I end up basically having to drag him down the old-fashioned way, which is trying to turn with it whilst not really turning and missing all of my shots. It's kind of like not really rolling scissors, and it's not really straight up, you know, one circle, two circle turn fight. It's just a bit chaos. Now, all of my shots here are missing, and I don't know whether or not this is because I'm firing too early or too late, or whether or not I'm just not leading them well enough. There was some pretty severe packet loss earlier on in this game. I cut it out of the video, but it was really amusing. Like, people were crashing left, right, and center. So I'm not sure if that's been affecting the hit detection, but it definitely felt like with this game I was missing a lot of shots that otherwise should have done, if not fatal damage, then considerable damage to the opponents. But not making excuses, it is what it is. My plan to rob the Corsair of its altitude advantage has borne fruit, and we are getting quite low indeed to the ground. However, getting low to the ground brings us another problem, which is the possibility of interference. Now, someone has spotted this sweeping, descending dogfight happening and decided, oh, there's a distracted 109 here, I can try and take that out, and somebody has a pot shot at my wing. However, I can tell by the sound of what was behind me that whoever was behind me was going at a fair pace and could not keep up with the turn fight that I was currently in with the Corsair, so I decided to very quickly finish the fight with the Corsair and get the hell out of Dodge. Now, that game went on for a considerably longer period of time after that. However, I really don't want to get into the habit of doing really long videos that are like, you know, over half an hour long, where I'm just doing a particular aircraft video. So I decided just to clip in and get the good bits of that particular match. And honestly, the good part of that game was the first half. After that fight with the Corsair, I was able to just make it back to base. I got pretty heavily damaged by, it turned out it was a Thunderbolt that was engaging me behind the Corsair. However, another 109 came in and saved my ass. I landed, and I then spent about 20 minutes flying around, not doing much. I took out a couple of bomber formations. There was another dogfight that ended really prematurely because the other aircraft just went into the desert, so I classified that as a maneuver kill. But the people that were dogfighting me in the Mustang and in the P-47 left the game, and after that it got really boring. So I thought, you know what, no, I'll just trim out those bits and just keep you guys with the exciting bits and just show you what it was like in that game in the F-4. So yeah, overall, it is a fantastic aircraft for its tier. I have a lot of fun in it, and I had a lot of fun with that game. Wasn't the best game, and I wasn't on my best form, and I apologize for that if that resulted in a poorer than average quality of this video. Again, I did have some really good footage from the weekend, but all of it was completely useless, and I'm kicking myself. It was an absolutely amazing game. I got like 19 kills, 1 death, which was like me face planting into a grove of trees at 600 kilometers an hour because I G-locked. But yeah, I'll see if I can find some bits of it from the replay and that, but honestly, it is what it is. Sometimes you just lose your files. But again, I'm waffling. The 109 F4, brilliant plane. If you're looking and researching German aircraft, or if you're thinking of getting into the 109s, if you haven't done that yet, definitely recommend the F series. Absolutely amazing. They kick ass. But aside from that, I'm going to love you and leave you guys. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will catch you guys next time. Goodbye.